Sikkim 365 and Baylor Plus have teamed up to bring Baylor fans the ultimate content bundle. You can sign up now for $17.99 a month, a $5 monthly savings, and get instant access to all premium content on both websites. For more information, visit either sikkim365.com or baylorplus.com today. What's up, Baylor family? Welcome into Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. It's Thursday, September 26th, and a little later in the episode, we will hear from Baylor's sophomore outside linebacker Kyler Jordan to discuss Baylor's upcoming game with BYU. But first, I am joined by Baylor football radio color and analyst and former Baylor quarterback JJ Joe. JJ provides a lot of great commentary to the football program, or on the football program over on Sikkim 365 every single week. You definitely need to check it out if you haven't yet, but JJ, great to have you on with us today.
Hey, appreciate you having me on, Colt. Man, I see a lot of your stuff, and it's good to kind of rap with you for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we couldn't do this segment without talking about the Colorado game. I know like everybody's probably avoiding it a little bit because of the way it ended, but you were there. First trip to Colorado, I guess, since the 2010 game for you. Up in the booth. I'm sure some memories coming back from RG3 and Jay Finley and all those guys up there winning that game, but man, this was a gut-wrenching loss for Baylor. And what takeaways do you have from this game and kind of moving forward for this team and where they're headed?
You know, Cole, those are great questions. And I mean, you got to talk about it. I mean, the players need to move on and coaches, but we can reminisce a little bit. But to me, it's just kind of it's a progression. And I know this is, everybody's talking about this is an important year for Coach Aranda, which I agree, but you see progress with this team, in my opinion. Baylor was the better team, right? I think that goes without question. But Colorado had the best two players on the field, and they had probably the top two picks in the draft. And when you have two young gentlemen like that on one team, they can go win a game, and that's eventually what they ended up doing. And so I felt like the lessons that are being learned, we started seeing it somewhat in we saw it a little bit in Tarleton game. I thought we saw remnants of it in the Utah game. This team is trying to figure out its way back to winning. And Colt, it doesn't take long, man. 21 didn't seem like that long ago, but you had a bunch of kids, and a lot of them are gone now, young men that experienced winning and saw the detail that was put in by Bernard and Petrie and JT Woods and all those guys. But it doesn't take long to lose that. And then when you do kind of lose it with the 6-7, then a 3-9, man, it's a long climb back. And I think that's where we are. We're to that point where we're just learning, okay, what does it take to win? And people get mixed up on what it really takes to win, but that's what they're learning.
Yeah. So obviously, I think the not polarizing topic, but it is quarterback play. What's going on with DeQuan Finn? Sawyer Robertson comes in, has played well. I would say his game against Colorado, 11 of 21 passing, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns, rushed 9 times for 82 yards and a touchdown. It wasn't a great game statistically, but it felt like he took what the defense gave him in a lot of ways, and he was able to put him into plays. In your opinion, can he be better this year than what he showed against Colorado? And ultimately, is he the guy for this team in winning games moving forward?
I think he is. I think he's the guy for this team this year. I like DeQuan. I think DeQuan will have to play a role in this team at some point in time in the year. Not to say that he's already lost a job. I'm not an insider, man, like you are. But I think for this team, Sawyer's ability to spray the ball a little bit better is important. It's important for the psyche of some of your most talented players, which are, the Monterey Baldwins, Ashton Hawkins, those guys, right? Yeah. And it's important. You got to have them in the game. I think on Saturday, Coach Spavital held back a little bit. And obviously so. Your defense is playing well. You're not running the ball, but I thought there were some first down opportunities to throw the ball that he said, hey, we're not going to do it. We're just going to play traditional here. I think as he starts to trust Sawyer a little bit more, we'll see a little bit more first down pass action. But at one point, I think Sawyer was 7 of 7. So, I mean, at one point, the quarterbacks didn't miss a pass. I mean, it was like they were all completing passes. And then he got, I think I looked up, he was 8 of 18. And then he ended up 11 of 21. So with that noted, the great thing about Sawyer, what I saw is late in the game, when the momentum swung, when we needed, I think we got in overtime or whatever, and maybe it was the drive before overtime. I mean, he moved us down. He made some plays. He made some throws. I think it tied up 24-24. He made a throw.
Yeah.
He made a throw. I think that was a touchdown. Help me if I'm going back on the play-by-play. Then they tied it up, and then we went in overtime, and Sawyer made a couple plays. That's what you want to see, Colt. That tells me that his heart rate came down a little bit. He made a couple plays. And we have to remember, still, I think, was that his sixth start, maybe, of his career?
Yeah. 4 last year, this year.
Yeah, that means he's still learning, and I think you're just going to see him get better.
Yeah, so that was with this scheme, you felt like they got into that game and said, we're not running the ball great, but we're running it well enough. And they really leaned into that. I mean, and truthfully, you're looking at a game where Colorado has 24 points until overtime, 24 points. You think you're feeling good with your offense. Like, they scored basically 7 points with 0 time on the clock and then 7 points in overtime. So you feel good about 24 points by giving up to Colorado in that particular setting, especially based on what that defense did last year throughout the entire year, the growth. Because that defense last year against this Colorado team, who knows where that would have gone. Oh, yeah.
And you're right. And that's why I think, Coach Spavital win. I think he said, hey, look, there's no need for me to take chances. Because I was about to pull my hair out for a while, Colt, because they were playing us a man free. They played a lot of man. And they can do that because they got a couple young men. They got DJ McKinley on one side, which I thought Hal was the best matchup against DJ McKinley at left corner. Well, that would have been their right corner. Then our left corner. Then they had, of course, the best player out there was, I'm forgetting his name right now.
He made me get a block too. Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter. Thank you, Cole. Travis Hunter. I mean, you just really weren't going to go at him too much, right? You just weren't going to take the chance, which is smart. But I thought we had so many chances with our slot against their third corner nickel that we just decided we took some. Now, don't get me wrong, Coach Spavital took a couple Monterey. We missed them. Ashton missed one, man. I thought would have broken open. I mean, that I at that point, that's why I didn't want to be too. I mean, I wasn't going to be too hard because Coach Spavital took a kill shot. He took a kill shot up 24-10 on 2nd and 9. And man, it wasn't perfect. Someone asked me on the thread of Signal 365, hey, why did you say that pass? And, I was like, it wasn't a perfect pass, but it was an easily catchable ball. And if he catches that ball, Colt, it's a foot race, right?
And he's fast
enough. I think he scores, and I think it's 31-10 before half.
Yeah.
And at that point, the way Shedeur was having to run around, and then we got after him in the second half, I think Coach Prime would have had to think about, do I save my son for the rest of the season?
Yeah.
But it didn't happen, and Baylor, that's part of what I'm saying, Colt, learning how to win. When you have a chance to make a knockout blow, you take it. And we missed that at multiple locations in the game.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about that play that would have made it 31-10.
Yep.
Turns around, next possession, I believe it was for Colorado. Yep.
Exactly.
Baylor doesn't get off the field. They make the play. Right. And it's 20 instead of 31-10, instead of up 21, you're up 7, and they get the ball after half. I mean, it completely shifted the momentum of that game. Credit to Colorado. People have asked me, what did Baylor? Shedeur Sanders made plays. There's probably not another quarterback in the Big 12 that could have survived that game. The way that Baylor rushed the passer, especially when they to their credit, Colorado leaned on their run game more than they have. I would say with their running backs, they did it more consistently than they have all season. But they still, they put him in a tough position, and he made play after play after play. And he's just good. You look at his lower half and you understand why it was hard to bring him down. He's a big kid. He's not 190 pounds.
Yeah. No, he really is. He was bigger because Ricky said when Ricky was on the field, Ricky Thompson, our sideline analyst, he said, man, he's bigger than I thought. Yeah. When he said Shedeur is bigger than I thought. And I think our guys figured that out right when they were trying to get him down. And because in the first half, Coach Aranda was right. Coach Aranda said 10 sacks. We should have had easily 5 sacks in the first half, but he was hard to tackle.
Yeah, it was. So I think on that particular note, something that we learned about this Baylor team, and we hadn't seen it, was the ability to rush the passer with their front. I mean, truly, I know that Colorado's offensive line has struggled, but 8 sacks potentially. I mean, if you look at missed tackles on Shador, I mean, it could have been very well a dozen sacks by the end of that game, and he broke them. But what did we learn from that Baylor front? Is it something that we didn't know? Is it something that it might not happen again? I think Colorado put them in positions to rush the passer because of the way that they structured their offense. But I mean, to me, if you're squaring up against Baylor in the future, now you're worried about the pass rush more than you would have been last year at any point, and obviously through the first 3 games of this year.
Yeah. The first 3 games, I think we really didn't get a good feel because the teams didn't throw the ball like that. Air Force definitely didn't. Yeah. Utah did a little bit, but Utah had a little bit different passing game, of course, in Colorado. But I think our guys showed. I think Steve Linton showed up big. He had a good game. Hated to see Garmin Randolph go out, and it looks like, I don't know the inside stuff, but I mean, it didn't look good as far as kind of being ready quickly. So Garmin was having a good game with pressure. I don't remember calling Trayvon's name as much, but that didn't mean he didn't have an impact. But our guys were getting after him, and I feel good about that. That our front line really showed the ability to rush the passer when tasked. Now the BYU game will be totally different. BYU won't do that. They're gonna be a little bit more, try to run at us directly. They will do some. Their quarterback is pretty mobile. They'll try to do a little RPO stuff. Get him on the move. I mean, but nevertheless, it did at least show us that when we're playing certain teams, that our guys can go get the passer, and that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think couple that with what we have seen as a strong defensive front in terms of stopping the run. I mean, between Matt Jones and Keaton Thomas, and then obviously Jackie Marshall. I mean, they have shown the ability to not only rush the passer now, but also stop the run. I think there's just a balance there that not many teams possess right now. I mean, we're only 4 games in, but the ability to say, hey, we're going to stop the run with our defensive front, but with that same defensive front, we're going to rush the passer. It does put some stress on offensive coordinator where they can hold up in coverage too. They might be able to drop 7 guys in coverage and rush the passer, but also drop 7 guys in coverage and stop the run if they need to.
Yeah, they will. And I was remiss in not mentioning it because we didn't really blitz as much. I mean, we blitzed some. Coach Aranda did. I think we got hit a couple times when we blitzed Shador. That defined things for him, gave him a look he wanted, and he kind of got us. So I think Coach was winning with 4, so he's like, I'm backing off this blitz. No need to. Maybe he did some zone stuff, dropping a guy, dropping a jack, sending a backer, but that still wasn't a blitz. But Matt is playing really good. I thought Matt, I spoke last week with Smoke, and I said, hey, look, Matt is doing this year what I thought I would see from him last year. He's playing really top-notch football. Keaton is good. I thought Keaton took one man on the sideline when he didn't need to.
Yeah,
against Shador, and that was a tough one because we really need to get him off the field. I want to say that was a 3rd down play against Shador.
I think it would have made it a 3rd and long, and it gave him. I think it would have been like 3rd and 16 because it was after a tackle loss, and then it gave him a 1st down rather than a 3rd and 16. So they probably would have gotten off the field the way they were rushing the passer.
Yeah, so that was a mistake, but overall, you're right. I think up front we've done a great job of Coach Aranda, and I knew Colt. Moving to Coach Aranda to call plays and scheme the defense, we'd be better. We got some players now. Don't get me wrong, he got split, but I knew we'd be better. Nothing against Coach Powledge, but when you have a guy with his background and his ability to scheme and his ability to focus, we're going to be better. And then we got a couple guys in the right spot, and we're playing better, and we need to play even better this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, I went to the defense. I want to go back to the offense for a second. Offensive line. We knew this scheme could really protect that offensive line, right? So last year, I don't remember what the numbers were. It was almost 3 sacks a game. I think in the Big 12, they gave up 3 sacks a game. Right now, it's 1.5 sacks per game. The last 2 games that Sawyer has started, it's been 1 sack per game. A lot of that's quick pass game. Sawyer's getting the ball out. But overall, what's the difference that you're seeing between this particular unit and what we saw last year? And is this group better, and can it be better at the end of the year?
I think it can. I think this group is a little bit more experienced. We have a Beausoleil he's got another year under his belt. I think we have a couple guys playing that weren't here last year, right? So I think this group is a little bit, I believe, in my opinion, a little bit more athletic, a little bit more from an experience standpoint. But I would, because last year's lineup that we had a lot of young guys playing.
Yeah.
I think if you ask me what I think this line can be, what I'm going to say is a solid average Big 12 offensive line. And I believe if we can get there, we'll be fine. And that's not a knock. I think if we can get to an average Big 12 offensive line where we can run the ball for, say maybe 3.5 yards to 4 yards a clip, with the ability that you have on the edge where they've done a decent job in pass blocking, that'll be what we need to, take the next step and be in position for the bowl game. So I'm happy to see that. I would like to see them get a little bit better in the run game. I think everybody would. I think between the mix of backs, I think we can find one of them. Bryson seems to be the one that's the most talented of all of them.
Yeah.
I think we got the mix to where they don't have to dominate guys, but guys who can find and probe. I still like, he's lost some playing time. I like Dawson. I think Dawson has some use here, but I think coach is trying to figure out the mix with Bryson coming in. I thought Dawson should have been at the end of the game. I mean, don't get me wrong. Dominique was doing a great job. It's not a knock against Dominique. That was a great hit by Hunter. Yeah. But I think as soon as you get within 5 yards of the goal line, Dawson is your guy. If it's not Bryson, you go to Dawson, right? And Dawson did fumble against Utah, but Dawson never fumbled. I mean, he never fumbled. Yeah. So, but anyways, I would like to see them get a little bit better as far as being able to create a few creases, and they don't have to dominate. And I think by the end of the season, if these guys can stay healthy, they'll find a mix to get to, I think, that average kind of space in the Big 12 offensive line.
Yeah, it's interesting because you have an offensive line, offensive scheme that everyone expects to throw it around. But Baylor right now is averaging over 40 rushing attempts per game. That includes sacks and quarterback runs. But truthfully, that's not what I expected. I didn't expect it to be 40, 25, 40 rushes, 25 pass attempts. Against Colorado, it was, I think, 40-21 or something. And you're just looking at but what I will, to their credit, even at that amount of attempt, that's what teams are expecting them to do. And they have done a decent job of getting 3.5 yards. You look at the last two games, Air Force, they ran it for a little bit better than that. Utah, I would say they did, but they are saying we're going to run the ball. We're going to do it 40 times a game as of right now. And they still have gotten a decent clip. And I don't know if they say, okay, let's go and let's throw it 40 times now. How could that affect the running game and open it up?
Well, it could, but it depends on what kind of passing you're doing. Now, let me say this, Coach. You're right about running the ball, but I would say if I looked at my running backs, because I know the stats you're talking about, we were well below 3 yards a carry, I think. But if I throw
Sawyer had a lot of it. Sawyer had a lot of it.
Yeah, if I throw Sawyer in it, and don't get me wrong, Sawyer's going to run the ball. Quarterback's going to run the ball, so I'm not going to trip on that. Sawyer made up the difference, but what I'm getting at is we need to be able, without exposing Sawyer as much, to run the ball successfully with our runners. We have good enough runners where if those guys get their position, they'll get some yards. They'll get those 4 yards. And actually, to be honest, I think Dominic started to do some of that in certain portions in that game in the second half.
Yeah. No, he did. I think between he and Bryson creating their own way a little bit, they've done a good job.
Bryson too, yeah.
So let's move on to the BYU game. Completely different outlook for this game compared to what they just faced against Colorado. It's a home game, but traditionally you're looking at completely different schemes for the most part and what they're going to do offensively, and I would even say defensively to a great extent. What do you see from BYU, and how does this Baylor team match up? Because we know we look at this Kansas State game against BYU, 38-9. I mean, that's nuts. But if you watch the game, if you kind of look at that doesn't add up. There was at one point BYU was down 6-0 at the end of the second quarter. Within 6 minutes or 8 minutes of play time, it was like 24-6. The flip. And they only run like 2 offensive plays. So I don't know if we know what BYU is to a great extent. I think they have a good defense. But what are your initial takeaways from BYU in prepping for this game?
Yeah, I had a chance to start watching the video from the SMU game because I thought SMU spreads it a little bit. They do what we do. Kansas State's a little bit different scheme, so I wasn't going to probably spend as much time on that, especially when I saw that Kansas State had 3 turnovers and 3 consecutive possessions. Basically, they had 2 right before half and 1 right after half, and BYU scored. Actually, one was actually a fumble 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that game was, at that point, BYU is a good defensive team. I mean, they have guys that are solid. They're not gonna be out of position. They're gonna keep you in front of them. They're gonna get you to the ground. That's what I kind of picked up from watching the SMU game, and I'm sure that it's consistent with what we've seen in the past with BYU in the last couple of years we've played them. The thing that surprised me a little bit, they weren't as huge at the defensive tackle. They do have a guy in their number 95 that's a traditional kind of big Hawaiian guy, right? That will plug things up. But they're just disciplined, man. So I look at this as they're going to be opportunistic. They want to play defense, grind the game. They have their quarterback. They finally found a quarterback that they feel good about, that they can make a few plays and then get in scoring position. But Baylor's big thing, I think, in this game is going to be finding a way to generate what I'm going to call rush yards. Some will be just traditional handoffs. Some will have to be Sawyer. And then the other will be, I think, Colt, through short passes. I think we have to figure out a way, whether it's check downs to our back, outside of just flaring him, maybe it's right in front of Sawyer so he sees it, to use the short passing game as a running game, in a sense. And guys, this week, because they play a lot of zone, it won't be on the move. It's not going to be a lot of those crossers. And no, you don't run crossers in zone. You go sit down in the zone.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to try to use that. And you have to still try to run the ball to try to have some success against this BYU team. They're going to be a tough out, man, a real tough out. But I think we can stay close. And I think I wrote this on the article this week, man. I said, hey, I just feel good about the matchup. Now, that doesn't mean anything. I just feel like this team won't run away from you. And if you can and Baylor's been knocking at the door. I think we're due one, but they got to go get it.
Yeah. I think you face Utah and you face Air Force that are teams that want to be physical. So Baylor, from matching that physicality, they might have played Colorado last week, and that was a little bit different, but they have that under their belt where they facing physical. And I think I'm with you. I think that you look specifically at Baylor's defensive front and what BYU wants to do offensively. I think it's going to be a situation where BYU probably wants to get their quick pass game going a little bit as well, because it's going to be a challenge, especially whoever's back for BYU in terms of injuries at running back. They've been missing some guys, and I'm anxious to see. There might be some similarities in game plans for offense, but for both of the offenses is we're not going to be able to run it between the tackles too often. Let's figure out how to get the ball on the edge. And I would say, based on what I've seen, that Baylor has more playmakers on the edge that BYU does. So that might be the advantage in the game. Is that exactly what you're saying?
Yeah, because I think, and I wrote this week in my article for Ashley, is that I said I think, while I think between Bryson, because Bryson has speed too, and even Reese. I know Reese didn't play a lot, and he's kind of a specialist for us now. I think we have to find out, can we get to the tackle? And I'm not saying, because you're not going to really outrun these guys, East and West Coast, and try to beat, because they do well at contain and chasing you down. You got to be on that edge between that tackle, and you got to find that, if you can get 4 yards, 5 yards, you got to go get it, right? That's success, and that's what the coaches have to drill in these running backs' head and these slot guys' head. If you can get 4.5, 5 yards on the play, don't try to outrun these guys. Get those 4 or 5 yards, and then let's line up and play it again.
Yeah, it should be fascinating. I think that the last 2 BYU games against BYU have been very interesting, 21 and 22. Obviously, the double overtime game there in 22 was kind of set the fire for that 22 season and understood what that Baylor team was going to be about. So I'm anxious to see. It's a top 25 game now for Baylor. Like, you get a top 25 win, even if BYU might not prove to be that, it could set a fire for this particular Baylor team going throughout the rest of the season. So we'll see. JJ, really appreciate you hopping on with today. Any final thoughts about this game going forward or anything else?
No, I would say Baylor fans, be geeked, man. I think this team is growing. I know last year, Coach said we got to win some games, but they're learning how to win. And the thing about the Big 12 is there's nobody out there. I think there's people who can run away with it. Colt, there's a couple teams that can, but I think a lot of these teams are evenly matched, and it depends on who brings what that day. And nothing like having a stands full of people, man, to help you get that gas going.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, JJ. We look forward to visiting with you again.
All right, my man. Appreciate you.
I am now joined by Baylor sophomore outside linebacker Kyler Jordan. Kyler, first things first, man. Like, appreciate you hopping on with us, but I know there was a tough loss on Saturday. I know kind of a heartbreaking into that game, the way it unfolded after felt like you had control of the game throughout. But I mean, for your position group specifically, I know that it was a kind of a headliner type of game, and that's probably what we'd be talking about more and more this week had the game been won. But how cool and how did it feel for your group specifically kind of to unleash after facing really run-heavy offenses throughout the first part of the season?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We were really looking forward to it. We knew going into the game just we were going to have a pretty important role. So going into it and being able to execute that plan for the most part is just really cool. We prepared to do it, and I feel like we did a pretty good job as a group going out there and showing what we're capable of.
Yeah, so Baylor defensively ended up with 8 sacks. I know you guys felt like you probably could have had more in that game, but how much of an advantage to have basically 4 or 5 guys at the outside linebacker position group to kind of just rotate through, and there's not really any drop-off. It doesn't seem like at this point there's much drop-off from one guy to the next, and it creates a lot of havoc for the offenses that you're facing.
Yes, sir. It's great, especially in those long games where we played as many plays as we had last Saturday, because we can get a guy that's fresh in there if somebody's tired or things of that nature. So
yeah, so we touched on this just a minute ago, but you look at the teams that you faced so far with Utah, obviously Air Force, Tarleton, and kind of their game plan, and then obviously Colorado kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. But now you face a BYU team that's kind of middle of the road. They do a lot of different things offensively compared to the teams that you face. I mean, what can we expect from BYU this week, and what are you guys kind of preparing for what they bring to the table?
Yes, sir. So we know as of right now that they're a pretty heavy 11P or 12P, meaning that we may be in a little bigger packages, preparing for a lot more run than we faced last week for sure. But just they're really good at what they do. So we just we got to go out there and execute the plan that Coach Aranda's set before us. So yeah, got to stop the run. So.
Yeah, so this obviously BYU is kind of known for their physicality, but you face a team with Utah that has been similar in that aspect and the way they kind of bring it to you. Then obviously Air Force as well. You face a couple of teams that pride themselves on that physicality. Is that something that you can take from those 2 games and really, I guess in general, just your practices every single day that you go into this game against BYU knowing that the physicality can be there and you've shown it before?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think so. I think it'll probably be somewhat very similar to Utah, I think. It's kind of what we're anticipating. So games like that are I feel like definitely will help prepare us for what we'll see on Saturday.
Yeah, so this week in practice, I mean, has it the mindset of the team? I know at one point it might have been you or someone else in an interview just said, like, we're not going to let this loss lead to more. It's going to be a different mindset than it was a year ago from the 2023 season. What has that been like in practice? Like, have you really seen that reflected in practice this week and what the team is doing?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry, I cut out.
No, you're fine. So this particular team obviously struggled last year after tough losses, but you mentioned it, I believe, in one of your interviews that we're not going to allow that to happen again because of the mindset, the maturity, and the leadership. What has this week of practices been like for you and obviously the team as a whole?
Yes, sir. I think there's a lot of things that we could learn from on Saturday. And I think just as a team, we're taking advantage of those lessons that we can learn to where things like that don't happen again, and it's always hard the Monday after a game, watching the film, taking in the truth, what it really looked like on tape. So it was hard on Monday, but I feel like the whole team came back Tuesday ready to work, ready to get back in the win column.
Yeah. So how do you balance that for a position group that had a lot of success like yours did with the loss? I mean, like mentally, like obviously there's a lot that you feel like you can improve on. Is there one area, maybe that's the question I'm asking, is there one area you say, hey, we did play well, but this is the area our group can get better in this week?
I think one was just finishing plays whenever we get there. There are a decent amount of times that we had opportunities to get more sacks than we did, and we missed them. So just taking advantage of those opportunities and tackling, getting there is the hard part. So just got to get them to the ground.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So something I want to ask you about, this kind of goes back to your high school days, but Baylor fans might not know this, but you were a great baseball player as well. All-state first baseman, hit 431 with 8 doubles, 8 triples, and 7 home runs as a senior. I see that little bit of smile popping up. So I don't know if this like makes you feel good, but I was a baseball player as well in high school, not to the level you were, but man, like take me back to high school baseball. What was that like for you? And it's like, is it something that you miss at this point in your life?
Man, baseball is just such a different pace than what football is. I always loved it. It was always good just changing the mindset, going from such a physical game like football to just playing baseball where it's played at a slower pace, a little more, I don't want to say enjoyable, that's not really the word, but it's just a different vibe. There's just a different vibe to baseball. And I always really enjoyed that.
Yeah. So have you ever thought of like, or had the opportunity to possibly play at Baylor? I know that balance would be tough with spring football and stuff, but has it been everything you've ever considered or possibly look into in the future?
Yeah, I've never really had the opportunity. So I think that's probably God's calling that I'm supposed to be playing football, you know. I think if he wanted me to be playing baseball, that's what I'd be doing. So
yeah, no, great mindset. So, Amanda, well, let me ask you too. I know this is kind of off the field related as well, but y'all just moved into an awesome new facility at the Fudge Football. I'm not sure if that's where you are right now, but I mean, tell us about that facility. And you're going to be there for a couple more years enjoying it. Is there anything that really stands out about that particular facility, or that's your favorite part?
Yes, sir. It's just incredible. All facets of it. There's a little quiet room that I like to get some homework done in. And they always keep it really, really cold in there. So go in there with a hoodie on, get some work done. But I'm sitting outside right now. So this is like the view from our players' lounge. So
nice.
Yeah.
So there's some behind the scenes footage right there. If you haven't been to the Fudge Football there, that's it. From Kyler Jordan. He's showing you behind the scenes right now. So
it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Really beautiful in the morning out here. Getting out here for practice and getting to see the sunrise. So
yeah, it's definitely changed a little bit. So you mentioned like kind of resting and relaxing a little bit. Is there a good place to take a nap? Like I think there was a video of a locker that like you could like lay down in. Is that right? Or is that something I'm imagining?
Yeah. I like to sleep in the quiet room just because it's so cold in there. And they've got reclining chairs in there. So I like to take naps in there. There are couches in the players' lounge. There's a few couches in the locker room too. So guys, you'll find guys sleeping throughout the day on any of those, but I enjoy the quiet room. So
yeah, has it created like a different vibe for the team in general, just kind of all being in the same spot compared to the previous facility, or has it changed? I guess it's just football only at this juncture, so it's just kind of the same guys every single day.
Yes, sir. I think it definitely has brought us closer, just to not even just the players, but like the staff too. I think there's just something about just being here with all the people that you're going to war with every single day. So which I think has been really cool. And it's obviously just everything that you could ever need to be successful on a football field. So
very cool. Well, Kyler, man, we really appreciate you joining us today for this visit. Good luck against this weekend against BYU, and look forward to watching you and the team play once again.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks, Kyler. All right, Baylor family, that's going to do it for today's episode of Inside Baylor Sports, the official daily podcast of Baylor Athletics. Thanks to Kyler Jordan and JJ Joe for hopping on with us. I'm your host, Colt Barber. Have a great Thursday, and Sick 'em Bears.